Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Juvenile Gurukul presents Christmas to Full Marks 40 Days of Board Prep Secrets. I'm Kishore Das, your mentor for the English Scoring Map CBSE Class 10 Weightage Analysis in Prose. So, gift of Christmas, boards में full marks. So, let's start with today's lesson. Okay, so these are all those things. We know about this, so skip, again. Okay, so now this is our map of the prose that we have in our theory. Okay, only in our theory, not in the supplementary reader. We'll be doing that later. Supplementary reader. We have a letter to God, Nelson Mandela, stories about flying from the diary of Annie Frank, then glimpses of India, then Mitchell the otter, Madam rides the bus, the sermon at Banaras, and lastly the proposal. So now let's discuss each and every chapter. Okay, a little bit. Okay, we have a letter to God. Nice prose basically, and I hope all of us have read this prose, read the story. So a letter to God. It it is basically circled around a poor farmer named Lancho. Okay, that's right. Poor farmer named Lancho. Okay, you have to remember the name Lancho. So Lancho plants corn. Okay, so all of us know what Lancho did, right? What happened to Lancho also. So if we don't know what happened with Lancho or what happened to Lancho, we will discuss over. Okay, let's start. A poor farmer named Lancho plants corn. Okay, he prays for rain, but a hailstorm destroys his crop. With unwavering faith, Lancho writes a letter to God, adding for 100 pesos. 100 pesos to replant. So there's an important word which will be very much important for writing the answers of this particular topic. That's unwavering faith. Okay, unwavering faith means andho vishwas. Okay, so Lancho had unwavering faith on God, and for his unwavering faith, he asked for 100 pesos to replant his crop, whatever to replant his crop of corn, which was destroyed due to the hailstorm. Okay. So now Lancho's letter, and touched by his faith, collects money from co-workers. The village postmaster finds Lancho's letter and touched his faith. Okay. So Lancho's letter, which was written to God, was collected by the village postmaster, which when the postmaster read, he was fascinated with the unwavering faith that Lancho had on God. Okay, that's why he collected money from his co-workers. Okay, the postmaster collected money from co-workers to help. Collects money from co-workers to help. They managed to send 70 pesos. Okay, ultimately the postmaster and his co-workers managed to send only 70 pesos in an envelope to Lancho. Okay, signing it as God. Clear? This is the whole thing. Now, the postmaster has sent the 70 pesos that he collected from his co-workers to Lancho. Okay, so I think it's clear up to here, and he signed it as God. When Lancho receives the money, he is disappointed. Obviously, Lancho asked for 100 pesos. 100 pesos, and he got only 70 in return. Okay, so it's the most obvious thing that he will be very disappointed. So when Lancho received the money, he was disappointed. He is disappointed that it's less than what he asked for. Okay. He's angry that some of it is missing and assumes it was stolen by the postmaster and the staff. Okay. So Lancho, being angry, he assumed that the postmaster and his staff had stolen the 30 pesos. Okay, they kept it with them. So, was stolen by the postmaster and the other staff members. Next, what happens? Unaware of the postmaster's kindness, he writes a second letter to God asking him to send the remaining money or the remaining amount by me. So what happens next? Unaware of the postmaster's kindness. Lancho was unaware of the postmaster's kindness, but we will be or we are aware of the postmaster's kindness. Okay. So what Lancho did is very comic actually. He writes a second letter. He writes a second letter to God asking him to send the remaining amount by mail. Okay, by mail. Because the post office people are a bunch of crooks. Crooks means they had stolen the 30 remaining pesos. Okay, so that's why Lancho, say this is Lancho, he asked God. Okay, he asked God for 100 pesos. The letter goes to the post office, where the postmaster, fascinated with the unwavering faith of Lancho upon God, collected 70 pesos from his co-workers and then sent it back to Lancho. Right? Now Lancho was very much disappointed with this because he asked for 100 and got only 70. So that's why Lancho wrote another letter to God. Okay, and this time he asked for the remaining 30 pesos, right? But the catch is that Lancho asked God not to send the remaining amount through post, but rather asked him to send the remaining amount through mail, because the post office people or the post office staff, according to Lancho, were a bunch of crooks. Okay, so I hope it's clear. Just rub it up. Okay, a bunch of crooks. Now, how the story ends? The story ends with Lancho's innocent faith and misunderstanding. Okay, so this was a very big misunderstanding of Lancho, as the postmaster and others are amused yet sad at this outcome. Okay, so the story ends when it was found that Lancho has completely misunderstood the postmaster and the other staffs about his remaining amount, and later writes another letter to the God. Okay, I hope it's clear. I'll take a screenshot of this. Okay, moving on. Okay, so now a quick discussion on Nelson Mandela Long Walk to Freedom. Okay. So this chapter recounts Nelson Mandela's historic rise and the end of apartheid in South Africa. Okay, so Nelson Mandela Long Walk to Freedom is basically an autobiographical novel written by Nelson Mandela himself. So what it is an autobiography. So this is an autobiography. Okay, autobiography of Sir Nelson Mandela, the first black prime minister of South Africa, and we have to remember that. Okay, now let's move. Oh, sorry, the first black president of South Africa. Sorry. So this chapter recounts Nelson Mandela's historic rise and the end of apartheid in South Africa. Nelson Mandela's historic rise and the end of apartheid in South Africa. Okay. So now apartheid is basically a practice of what? You guys have to let us know in the comment section. Drop the comments now. It opens with the scene of Mandela's inauguration on May 10, 1994. Okay, so this is the very important date, 10th May 1994, as the first black president of South Africa. As the first black president of South Africa. That's very important. Okay. Jets roar overhead and triumphant crowds watch this symbolic end to apartheid. Okay. So what happens? Jets roar overhead and the triumphant crowds, the crowds who had won, who were the winners, who just got the victory. As we all know, African subcontinent was also a colonized part of the Britishers, like India. So that's why when it got independence or freedom, so Nelson Mandela became the first black president. Before him, it were only the whites and the whites only. Okay, that's why the triumphant crowd. Watch this symbolic end to apartheid. The narrative then goes back to describe the brutal system of apartheid. Okay, the brutal system of apartheid. Okay, so if you guys have ever read the story, the whole story, you guys can understand it very easily. What Sir Nelson Mandela wanted to convey through this autobiographical novel or his book. Decades of racial segregation and cruelty under white minority rule, Mandela expresses gratitude to fellow freedom fighters and recalls how white supremacist policies had turned his homeland into a living hell for people of color. Okay, so you can use this line actually in any answer. Like Mandela expresses segregation. Sorry, not segregation. Mandela expresses gratitude to fellow freedom fighters and recalls how white supremacist policies had turned his homeland into a living hell for the people of color. Okay. So basically, Mandela expresses how the white supremacist policy, that is the British policies, whatever was there in South Africa, it was also here in India, right? So how the Britishers actually divided the Indians and then they started ruling over us, it was almost the same for South Africa or the African subcontinent. That's why he had written this, like white supremacist policies had turned his homeland into a living hell for the people of color. Right? Like the racial discrimination. We have to figure out how and when the apartheid has affected the people of South Africa. Okay, we have to figure out this thing from this chapter, and that's a very important thing of this chapter. Now let's moving on. Now moving on, he recalls joining the African National Congress and devoting himself to the struggle. Ultimately, after years of struggle and sacrifice, he became president in a spirit of reconciliation. Okay, so he joined the African National Congress and devoting himself to the struggle, ultimately, after years of struggle and sacrifice, he became president in a spirit of reconciliation. Okay, so a bit boring chapter, but yeah, this chapter is very easy to learn. Okay, you can answer a lot of questions from this chapter. It's very easy to answer. The tone is solemn and proud. Mandela honors past sacrifices and celebrates the triumph of freedom while acknowledging the hard road that led there. Okay, so basically, the whole chapter is about what Mandela felt and how he felt, how they got independence, how he became the first president of, how he became the first black president of South Africa, and all these things. A very basic chapter, and not a lot has been written over in this chapter. I hope it's clear to all of you guys. If you want, then please take a screenshot. It will be very, very helpful for you. Okay. So now moving on. Okay, so now the story is about flying. This is a brilliant chapter, right? We get motivated and get scared at the same time in this chapter. Okay, so it comprises of two stories: his first flight and the black aeroplane. Okay, so let's start. This chapter combines two short stories about flying. The first one is basically from here. His first flight. Uh, in his first flight, a young seagull chick lives in a cliff nest, okay, surrounded by an adult colony. So adult colony is basically the parents of the young seagull. Okay, collecting down. He's afraid of taking his first flight. The young seagull is very much afraid of taking his first flight. His first flight. One morning when he is very hungry. Now let's just sum it up. What happened right now? So in this story, his first flight, a young seagull chick who was living in a cliff nest was surrounded by an adult colony. So his parents or his brother, sister, whatever they were surrounding him. He was surrounded by them. And he was also afraid of taking his first flight. So what happened next? One morning when he is very hungry, his parents make him jump off the rock to dive for fish. Okay. So one morning when he was very hungry, we have to remember this. When he is very hungry, his parents make him jump off the rock to dive for fish. Okay. So as all of us know that seagulls basically thrive on fish. Okay, they eat fish a lot. So what happened as he was very much scared of taking his first flight and he was afraid of taking the first flight, his parents when he was hungry they just threw him down. They just motivated him to go and take his first flight and to dive for fish. Now terrified he falls, but at the last moment his instincts kicks in and he stretches his wings and soars into the air to catch fish for himself. Okay, so at first he was terrified. He was completely terrified at the first place. Terrified and he falls, but at the last moment his instincts kicks in. Instincts, we all know, we all have that particular instinct, right? Instinct kicks in. It can kick in at any time, right? And he stretches his wings and soars into the air to catch fish for himself. The story celebrates overcoming fear to achieve independence. Okay, so that's a very heavy line. The story celebrates overcoming fear to achieve independence, right? Okay, so now let's sum up the whole chapter for you guys. So in this chapter, his first flight, as we have seen earlier, or yeah, the seagull, the young seagull, is very much afraid of taking his first flight, right? So that's why when he was hungry, right, his parents just threw him off the cliff as he was sitting in the cliff nest, right? They just threw him away, they just dropped him and told him to go and go dive and grab that fish, have that fish, that's your food. So the at the first time, the young seagull was very much afraid. He was terrified completely. He never expected his parents to do that, right? But later on, his instincts kicks in at the last moment. At the very last moment, his instincts kicked in, and he just stretched his wings and soars into the air to catch fish for himself. I hope it's clear. The story celebrates overcoming fear to achieve independence. Like for the humans also for the human race, we have to overcome our fear in order to achieve independence or freedom, right? Okay, so let's move on. Let's move to the next topic, which is the black aeroplane. Okay, black arrow. So this story is also very fascinating story, right? In Black Aeroplane, an English pilot is flying at night over Australia a storm when a storm disorients him. Okay, so let's mark it down. An English pilot is flying at night over Australia. Okay, so the English pilot was flying at night over Australia when a storm just disorients him. His radio is broken and fuel is low. Okay, so his radio was also broken. Radio broken, fuel low. Suddenly he sees a silent dark airplane. Black airplane. Okay, suddenly he sees a silent dark airplane appear and signals. Now that's very important. Appear and signals. The black aeroplane basically signals to the English pilot. Okay. Trusting the mysterious plane. Now see here very carefully. Trusting the mysterious plane. Now why mysterious? Why is it said mysterious? It's mysterious because nothing was getting connected to that black aeroplane. No radar, no signal, no communication, nothing. The black aeroplane was just showing the path to that English pilot. Okay. He follows it through clouds, it leads him safely out of the storm. Okay. So following the black aeroplane, the English pilot just cleared and safely came out of the storm. Okay. Now next what happened? And he lands at the next airport. Okay. Now the thing is that the black aeroplane just helped an English pilot to land safely at the next airport since he had a very low fuel and his radio was also broken. Okay. Now let's move on. When he asks the control tower about the night plane, they say no such thing exists. Okay, they say no such thing exists. A flight exists. Okay, the black aeroplane was a phantom. Okay, so the black aeroplane was a phantom. It's basically a type of flights. Both stories highlight daring and unexpected help. One of nature's push, the other of mysterious guidance. Okay, the tone shifts from tense, the pilot's danger to relieved and awe-filled by the. Okay, so I hope we are done with this. Take a screenshot of this; it will be very helpful for you guys. And let's move to the next topic from the Diary of Anne Frank. So this story is very important, a very interesting story, right? About Anne Frank. Okay, a 13-year-old girl. Listen. This extract shares entries from young Anne Frank's or Annie Frank, whatever, Frank's diary when she is about 13. So when Annie or Anne, she was of 13 years old, she used to write diaries. So these stories or these extract are basically from her written diary or her diary writings. Okay, let's break. After receiving the diary, Annie or Anne christens it Kitty. So Kitty was basically the name of the diary that Anne has given. Okay, so after receiving the diary, Anne christens it Kitty and confides confides in it regularly as though it were a friend. Okay, so she used to treat her diary like a friend. Okay, she describes writing in it to share the stream of her thoughts and feelings. One diary entry talks about her elementary school experiences. Okay, so basically, Annie, she was writing about her experiences in the diary. So one of the diary entries were about her elementary school experiences. What were the experiences? Nervous classmates awaiting exam results, and Annie herself worried chiefly about her upcoming math test. So her classmates, Anne's classmates, were nervous about the class exam results. Okay, about the exam results, and Anne herself was worried chiefly about her upcoming math test. Okay, she was not at all bothered about what the upcoming results were, but rather she was bothered about the upcoming math test. Okay, now another entry. Another entry describes how Anne's talkative nature earns her an essay assignment. Okay, so now this is very important. Another entry describes how Anne's talkative nature. She was given the name of a chatterbox. Earns her an essay assignment. Okay, so Anne was also given another name, the chatterbox. Okay, she used to talk. She used to talk a lot in the class. The teacher punishes her for chatting by making her write an essay titled A Chatterbox. Okay, so what was the name of the essay? A Chatterbox. So Anne imagines being a mermaid and writes a playful verse to win back freedom in class. Okay, so she imagines herself. Anne imagines being a mermaid and writes a playful verse to win back freedom in class. Okay. I hope it's clear. Her third essay prompt is quack, quack, quack. Third essay prompt. The third essay for her was titled Quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox. Okay. So this was given to her by her teacher, by her math teacher. Quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox. And with help from a friend turns it into a witty poem. Okay. And with the help of one of her friends turns this thing into a witty poem. The teacher is so amused that afterward Anne is allowed to speak freely again. Okay, so the teacher was very amused by the work of Anne and she was allowed to talk even more. Not even more, but she was allowed to talk freely in the class. Okay. Through these diary anecdotes, we see Anne's lively voice and sense of humor as she negotiates the everyday challenges of childhood under her parents' and teachers' guidance. Okay, so this is the thing which summarizes the whole. So this is the thing which summarizes the whole story of from the diary of Anne Frank. Okay, I hope it's clear. Sorry for the disturbance. Take a screenshot of. Okay. Next, we have quick discussions on glimpses of India. Okay, so this is basically a collection of short stories from India or of the Indian origin. Okay, so let's see glimpses of India. is a collection of short travel stories set in India. Okay, so these are basically travelogues. Okay, I hope you all know what travelogues are. One part, the first part, a baker from Goa. Okay, we're getting a baker from Goa. A baker from Goa tells of the Pader family of bakers in Goa whose recipes date from Portuguese colonial times. Okay, that's a very interesting and important topic. The Pader family of bakers in Goa whose recipes date from Portuguese colonial times. Okay, so as we all know, the whole Indian subcontinent was colonized by the British, but the whole is not true. Goa is such a state which was colonized by the Portuguese. Okay, so we have to remember that Goa was colonized by the Portuguese. So Pader, this is basically a family of bakers in Goa whose recipes of baking bread, okay, so whatever they bake, were dated from the Portuguese colonial time. Okay, their daily life is rich with tradition. They deliver bread at dawn by bicycle with jingling bells. Okay, so let's see the daily life. The daily life is rich with tradition. Okay, so they were very traditional people, right? Tradition. They deliver bread at dawn, right? By bicycle with jingling bells, and the head baker. The head baker wears an old ceremonial. Okay, so there can be short questions from these lines. Okay, what was the traditional attire of the head baker? We have to answer like an old ceremonial coat. Their family once won prized medals for their skill. Okay, so they have also won medals for their skills. For their skill. Okay, so I hope it's done. A baker from Goa, the first collection or the first section of this whole collection. Now the another section, which is Kurg. Kurg describes the hilly region of Kurgi or Kodagu. This is a place. Describes the hilly region of Kurg or the Kodagu. It highlights the lush green landscape, coffee plantations, and the brave people of Kurg. Okay, so what are the highlights? The lush green landscape, coffee plantations, and the brave people of Kurg. There are also some legends. Legend means folklores or folk tales. Legends trace them to Alexander's army. So there are some legends or some stories about the Kurgi people or the people of Kurg that they were the descendants or they have connection to Alexander's army. Okay, so you all know who Alexander was. Now, the people wear the traditional kuppia coat. Okay, the traditional kuppia coat and are known for valor. Okay, they are very brave. They are the warriors. They are fighters. Okay, they are known for their valor. It is the home district of India's first army chief, Cariappa. Okay, so Kurg is also the home district of India's first army chief, Cariappa. You have to remember this. Okay, so I think we are done with Kurg. Now to the third piece. The third piece is basically tea from Assam. Okay, we all know that Assam is very famous for its tea, right? So let's follow this up. Tea from Assam follows two friends, Rajveer and Pranjal. Okay, so we have Rajveer and Pranjal traveling on a train to Assam's tea country. Okay, so they are traveling on a train to Assam's tea country. Okay, so Rajveer is passionate about tea. Okay, so Rajveer is passionate about tea and entertains his friend by explaining tea legends. By explaining tea legends. A Chinese emperor's discovery and monk's insomnia cure. Okay, so these are the two legends that Rajveer explains to his friend. Okay, now next, and tea cultivation details. So Rajveer also knows a lot about tea cultivation and he also shares his knowledge with his friend. They reach the Dekiabari tea estate and Rajveer's knowledge impresses his friend's father. Okay, so they went through or they reached the Dekiabari tea estate. We have to memorize this. Okay, and Rajveer's knowledge impresses his friend's father, means Pranjal's father. Now these stories share the beauty of India's regions and culture. Okay, very good. So these stories share the beauty of India's regions and culture, and this is a very important line. We can use this in the answers. Okay, let's move on. The tone is vivid and affectionate. Each sketch captures local color and personal anecdotes. Okay, giving readers a lively glimpse into Indian life and landscapes. I hope it's clear. Okay, I hope Glimpses of India is clear to all of you. If you have any queries or any question about these chapters that we are doing right now, please let us know in the comment section. Okay? Take a screenshot of this. Okay, now let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is Mijbil the Otter. So Mijbil the Otter, a very funny story. Let's start with this. So written by Gavin Maxwell. So Gavin Maxwell's chapter recounts his experiences raising a pet otter named Mijbil. So what was the name of the pet otter? It was named Mijbil. Okay, pet otter. So here the author, okay, Gavin Maxwell, is talking about his pet otter whose name was Mijbil. While in Basra, Iraq, Iraq, Maxwell asks a friend to get him an otter. Okay. So when Maxwell was in Basra, Iraq, he asked one of his friends to get him an otter. Soon a small otter is brought abroad. Okay. Soon a small otter is brought abroad. Ship clutched in a sack and handed to Maxwell. Okay. So when he told or asked his friend to get him to get him an otter, a small otter was brought to him. Okay, then clutched in a sack and handed to him. He names the creature Mitchbill. In the river that night, Mitchbill begins to play with Maxwell. Okay, so Maxwell names the creature Mitchbill. In the river that night, Mitchbill begins to play with Maxwell by splashing regularly. Maxwell keeps Mitchell as a house pet. He takes Mitchell legally. Okay. So Maxwell has kept Mitchell as a house pet. Okay. Now he takes Mitchell legally but faces airline restrictions, which is an obvious thing. He takes Misbil legally. That's very important. We have to answer this. We have to write this thing. Okay. He takes Misbil legally, but faces airline restrictions and difficulties. Okay. He also faces airline restrictions and difficulties. That's very important during the journey. At first, Misbil is nervous and confused during the flight. Then he discovers running water from a tap and joyfully swims in it. So, at first, Misbil is nervous and confused. He was also confused during the flight. Then he discovers running water. Then he discovers running water from a tap. Okay, from a tap and joyfully swims in it. The trip is eventful. At one point, Misbil tears through his blanket and nips Maxwell startled when startled. Achha, causing Maxwell to end up with a few scratches. Okay, so Misbil was very fun-loving author, right? At one point, what did he do? Misbil tears through his blanket and nips Maxwell. Okay, he tears through his blanket and nips Maxwell when startled, causing Maxwell to end up with a few scratches. Causing Maxwell to end up with a few scratches. Okay, now moving on. Finally, they reach London. Okay, so now they reached London. Okay. Misbil adapts to life in England, and Misbil also adapts to life in England, which is very tough to do, I think, coming back from Iraq. By learning games, he dives for marbles and plays catch with small suitcases. Okay, so he dives for marbles and catch with small suitcases. Small suitcases. Now, passers-by on the street see Maxwell walking a strange creature and shout guesses. Okay, so now the passers-by, they were very interested in Misbil right now because they have never seen such a thing, right? So they were just strange creature and they just shout guesses. Some were like a dog, then a monkey, sea lion. These were their guesses. Okay, so that's the thing. The otters the otter's antics amuse everyone. Okay, amuse everyone. So Misbil is a very fun-loving creature, right? So that's why his antics also amuses every single person who was looking to him. Throughout, Maxwell treats Misbil with loving patience, and the tone of the narrative is warm and playful. Okay, so throughout, Maxwell treats Misbil with loving patience. Okay, with loving patience. Maxwell was very patient. And the tone of the narrative is warm and playful. I hope it's clear. And the concluding lines, Maxwell shares the ups and downs of caring for an exotic pet. Now, otter is an exotic pet. Okay, he shares the ups and the downs also of caring for an exotic pet, highlighting Mitchell's curious personality and the family's delight in their unusual company. Okay, that's the whole story. I hope it's clear. Take a screenshot and we'll move to the next chapter. Okay, so this is our next chapter. Madam rides a bus. Okay, so this is also a very interesting story where an 8-year-old girl moves up to a bus and she starts riding without her parents knowing. Okay, now let's move. This story follows 8-year-old Valli. 8-year-old Valli, a poor Tamil village girl with an adventurous spirit. So Valli had a very adventurous spirit. Am I clear? Okay. Every day she watches the town bus go by and longs to ride it into the city. Okay. So she watches every day. She watches the town bus go by and longs to ride it into the city. So she has an urge. Okay. She has that longing for that bus ride to the city. Okay. As she was looking at it every single day. One morning she finally decides to go. She sneaks into the house. She sneaks into the house while her mother is sleeping and stands by the bus turnaround point. Okay. So one morning she finally decides to go. Okay. She sneaks into the house. Okay, so she just went into the house and she just wanted to check if her mother was awake or not. And thankfully, her mother was sleeping. Okay, while her mother is sleeping and stands by the bus turnaround point. To the point where the bus usually takes a turnaround or a roundabout was there. When the bus arrives, the conductor jokingly calls her Madam. Okay, the conductor jokingly calls her Madam and lets her on. Valli is thrilled by the bus seats and the scenery she has never seen up close. So she was very thrilled. Valli is thrilled by the bus seats and the scenery she has never seen up close. She laughs as a cow runs across the road, causing the bus to honk. So she was an 8-year-old kid, na? So that's why she was very playful. And that's why she used to laugh whenever the bus used to honk to let a cow pass by. Okay, causing the bus to honk. On the way back, Valli enjoys the ride. Suddenly, she sees something on the roadside. Suddenly, she sees something on the roadside. The cow she had seen alive now lies dead. Okay. So Valli has seen that the cow that she had seen alive now lies dead. Okay, the cow has died. The sight of death in the road startles Valli into an adult-like understanding that life and death are both part of the world. Okay. So Valli simply understood that life and death are both part of the world. She is deeply disturbed and becomes quiet and serious and gets home just in time for dinner. Okay. So we can see a static change in the behavior or the mentality of Valli. She was a very cheerful and joyful child before the starting of the ride, going to the city, and while coming back from the city, when she saw the cow was lying dead, she was completely traumatized and she had changed completely. Okay? She understood that both life and death are part of the world. Okay, and she is deeply disturbed and becomes quiet, and she becomes quiet and serious and gets home just in time for dinner. Okay, so let's move on to the next chapter. Okay, so I think this is our second last chapter, the Sermon at Benares. Okay, a very motivating chapter. This is not even a chapter. This is basically a passage. Okay, Sermon at Benares talks about Gautam Buddha. So this passage dramatizes an episode from the Buddha's life. So we get to know about Gautam Buddha and his life through this passage. It begins by describing Siddhartha Gautama's sheltered youth. Now, who is Siddhartha Gautama? Siddhartha Gautama is basically our own Gautam Buddha, okay? And his sheltered youth. Never seeing suffering until he encounters an old man, a sick man, and a corpse on successive outings. So Siddhartha Gautama, who was basically a prince, he was a prince, okay? He was not a common man like you and me, he was a prince. So he has never seen any kind of suffering in his entire life until and unless he encounters an old man, a sick man, and a corpse on successive outings. Okay. Now, moved by these sights, he renounces his royal life and spends years seeking enlightenment. Okay. So, after seeing this, after these sights, he renounces his royal life. He said thank you and no more to his royal life, and he went out in search of what? In search of enlightenment. He finally achieves enlightenment under a Bodhi tree. Okay, under a Bodhi tree, and becomes the Buddha. And after finding enlightenment, he becomes the Buddha. Okay. In his first sermon at Benares, Buddha tells the story of Kisa Gautami, a young mother whose son has died. Okay. So in his first sermon, in his first sermon is basically religious or spiritual lectures given to ordinary people by monks or someone of the straight out Buddha. So in his first sermon at Benares, Buddha tells the story of Kisa Gautami. Okay, Kisa Gautami, a young mother whose son has died. Grieving, she begs Buddha to bring her son back. Buddha tells her to find some mustard seeds from a household where no one has ever died. So just feel this thing. Isa Gautami, a young mother, she was grieving and she was lamenting her son's death. She went to Buddha and asks him, or and pleads to him, return her son. Buddha asks her to collect some mustard from from a household where no one has ever died. Where no one has ever died. Now that's impossible. That to find any household where no one has ever died. This is practically impossible for anyone to find such a household, right? And so it was for Kisagotami. Kisagotami goes house to house in vain. Everywhere people have experienced death. Okay. Only then she realized death's universality. Okay. So Kisagotami goes house to house in vain. She was in vain. She was so desperate to find mustard seeds in order to bring back her son's life. But when she went to house, and everywhere people were saying that, yeah, we have experienced death in our family, in our house, she got to understand slowly the university of Death is universal and it is also inevitable. You cannot just prevent death. You cannot say that no, I won't die. I cannot die. It's not possible practically. Man is mortal. One who has taken birth has to die, and that's the universal thing which Buddha wanted to make us understand. Okay, let's move on. Everywhere people have experienced death. Only then she realized death's universality. Okay. Buddha thus teaches her and the listeners that death is inevitable and life suffering worsens when one clings to loss. Okay. Death is inevitable and life's suffering worsens when one clings to loss. So this was the whole chapter or the passage. This is the basic summary, the gist of the whole passage. Okay. So you guys can take a screenshot and we'll move to the last topic of this video, which is the proposal. Okay. So this is the last prose in your syllabus and also the last topic of this whole video. Okay, so we'll be covering this in a short while. Okay, so let's start. So Anton Chekhov's play, The Proposal, is a partial comedy about marriage driven by property and pride. Okay, so this is a partial comedy about marriage driven by property and pride. Okay, now Lomov, even Lomov, a nervous landowner suffering from heart palpitations, visits his neighbor Chubukov, Stephen Chubukov to propose marriage, propose marriage to his daughter Natalia. Okay, very good. However, instead of romance, Lomov and Natalia immediately begin arguing over the ownership of Oxen Meadows. Okay, instead of romance, before having any casual talks about marriage or romance or romanticizing the marriage, Lomov and Natalia, the bride and the groom, immediately begin arguing over the ownership of Oxen Meadows. Okay. The argument grows so intense that Lomov collapses and is okay. The argument grows so intense that Lomov collapses and is thought to be dead. Okay. So Lomov was okay. So Lomov had that heart problem, right? Heart palpitation. Okay. So the argument with Natalia was so much intense that Lomov could not withstand with that, and he basically collapses, and it is thought that he is dead. Okay. So when Natalia learns that Lumov had actually come with a marriage proposal, now that's very important. When she learned about that Lumov had actually came with a marriage proposal, she becomes hysterical. She becomes hysterical and insists he be revived. Okay. So earlier, Natalia knew about that Lomov had came with a marriage proposal, but now when she knew about that, now she becomes hysterical and she insists that he be revived. Once Lomov regains consciousness, Chubukov hastily declares them engaged. Okay, so once Lomov regains consciousness, Chubukov hastily declares them engaged. Okay, I hope it's clear. Now, ironically,
Ironically means contradictorily. Ironically, even after the engagement, Lomov and Natalia resume quarreling. Okay, so even after the engagement, after their engagement, they kept on. Lomov and Natalia kept on quarreling. Okay, they resumed their quarreling. This time over the superiority of their dogs. This time over the superiority of their dogs, highlighting the absurdity and superficiality of their relationship. So this highlights that their relationship is completely absurd. Okay, this has no meaning, no sense, no nothing. It was just a namesake of a relationship. Absurdity and the superficiality of their relationship. I hope the whole chapter is clear to all of you guys. Now we will move on to the next slide, which will be of PYQs. Okay, so these are the PYQs. Type 1. These are basically extracts. Okay, so you will have two extracts, A and B, out of which you have to answer only one. Okay, so this extract is from the first flight. Let's read it down. He just felt a bit dizzy, then he flapped his wings once and he soared upwards. Okay, and he soared upwards. Ga 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 go kol a. Okay, so these were the terms that the seagull used. Okay. His mother swooped past him, her wings making a loud noise. He answered with her another scream. Then his father flew over him, screaming. He saw his two brothers and his sister flying around him, curveting and banking and soaring and diving. Okay. Then he completely forgot that he had not always been able to fly and commended himself to dive and soar and curve shriekingly, surely. Okay, so this is the extract or the passage. Now you have some questions like contradict the view that the young seagull celebrated his maiden flight alone. Okay, so now you have to basically answer this question like this, contradict the views. You have to show up the contradictory views of the young seagull as he celebrated his maiden flight alone. Okay, so you have to write and give description of how the young seagull felt when he first went on to fly. Okay. The next question is, which of the following statements best explains the young seagull's experience as he starts flying? Okay, so you have to find out the best suitable sentence or statement. Okay. The first one, the young seagull immediately mastered flying and was no longer afraid. And the next one is, the young seagull gradually gained confidence and joined his family in the air. Now, which of these two statements are the best explanation to the young seagull's experience to start flying? You have to find out that. Okay. The next one, what can be inferred about the young seagull's emotional state after flying with the family? Okay. So you have to write the emotional state of the young seagull after he joined his family in his first flight. Okay. Now you can put up some summary works over there also. If you put the summary over here, this will be a good fit, but you have to be very precise with that. Okay. Now read the following sound and movement words. Okay, these are the sounds and the movement words. Select the option and correctly categorize 1 to 5 into sound and movement words. Okay, look at the question paper and try to solve it. The next one, answer any 4 of the following 5 questions in about 50 words. So these marked questions are from prose section. Okay. So the first one is, otters are known for their peculiar behavioral traits. Support this statement with reference to any two traits mentioned in Mitchell the otter. So we have to basically mention two of the traits that are mentioned in the story Mitchell the otter of an otter. Okay. So 3 marks for this and write a little bit for 1 mark. Next, the third question, let us see. How can Nelson Mandela's vision of liberating both the oppressed and the oppressor be applied in modern day societies to address issues of inequality and discrimination? Okay, so this is a very good question for Mark 3. Now, in this question, you have to show a detailed comparison between modern day problems and the problems faced by Nelson Mandela and his people, okay, in 1994 and prior. Okay, so these will be the key differences and the key points to write this answer in particular. Okay, the next and the last question, number 5. How does Chubukov's reaction to Lomov's marriage proposal reflect his priorities and values? Okay, so we have to write the whole story over here. And to conclude this answer, we have to have a very precise knowledge of the whole topic and the summary and everything, the whole plot basically. Okay, so if we are done with these, then it will be very easy to score good marks in prose section also. Okay, now let's move on. Okay, so we have two questions of mark 6, 120 words. As I have explained in the earlier video, you guys can keep up that also thing. Okay, like we can write up to 130, 135 words, but we will try to keep that in 120 or 110 words. Okay. So the question given here is very easy. How does literature like The Baker from Goa, Kurd, and Tea from Assam contribute to promoting tourism and raising awareness about regional cultures and traditions? Okay, so these three are the extracts of travelogue which we get in the chapter called Glimpses of India, where we get a very good detail and discussion about the baker from Goa. This one is from Goa, this one is from Kurg, the place Kurg, and this one is from Assam. So if we are able to write something about these three places, then this will be a great option to take. Okay, if you can ponder around tourism and raising awareness about regional cultures along with literature and tradition, this will be a very good jump or a very good step towards getting 6 marks. Okay, so this is the whole thing. Thus we can score very good marks in English in the prose section along with the poetry and also the supplementary reader, which we'll be doing later. Okay, so this was my time with all of you guys. So please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Juvenile Gurukul. Okay, the Juvenile Gurukul, and we will be coming back in a short while taking this Christmas to full marks thing. Okay, see you soon.